A new Phobos army formation teased by Games Workshop today. Can Obsec Reivers, permanent light cover, and a few stratagems and relics make a sneaky Space Marine army work? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where today we're talking about some teased Space Marine rules coming out from Games Workshop in one of their previews. Since the majority of the Phobos units first came out in the Shadow Spear box, Games Workshop have bigged up the idea of a Phobos Scout Company type Marine army a few times, and today it seems like they're really trying to make that a viable way to play. It seems that the Phobos Armoured Marines are going to be getting a new Army of Renown type formation coming out in that Warzone Nachman book, Vigilus Alone. As always, whenever I talk about that, not exactly the best delivery system for new rules, but still a potentially interesting formation, and trying to make Phobos work as an entire army, which isn't really something that you see outside of more fluffy and casual games at the moment. So, kind of unusually for these previews, Games Workshop do seem to have been fairly specific about what you're getting and what you're not getting. It doesn't seem like we're left in question as to which units you'll be able to field with this. You get to run everything with the Phobos keyword, plus suppressor squads, impulsors and invictors. The Phobos units will be the characters in the HQ choices, the Phobos captain and the 2 lieutenants and the librarian, Reivers in the elite slot, infiltrators and incursors in the troop slot, and eliminators in the heavy support. With the addition of suppressors and impulsors, it's really quite good news for anyone who's picked up multiple copies of Combat Patrol Space Marines. It looks like every single model in that box will be perfectly usable here, so this could be a fairly interesting force if you are just getting started with Space Marines and that was the box that you chose to go with. However, I must admit this unit pool does seem very limited in scope. A lot of the units are really quite useful utility units, ones that you might want at least some of in your army, but just perhaps aren't the strongest damage dealers. To do heavy lifting and actually destroy the enemy army, you're really looking at the Invictor, Eliminators and Suppressors. They're the only ones with damage output that's beyond passable, and while I think all of them are kind of solid enough, you can't exactly say that they're some of the strongest damage dealers in the Marine Codex, not compared with the more common picks of things like Grav Devastators or Dreadnoughts, and you basically don't have any dedicated melee units here. The Invictors can do a bit perhaps, but you're leaving the heavy melee elites behind as well, things like Blade Guard and Vanguard Veterans and Terminators. I think basically to work this formation does need to find a way of those units doing enough damage to actually threaten the most important enemy units, but I still feel games are going to feel like a bit of an uphill struggle playing as a bit of a guerrilla force as opposed to a frontline damage dealer one. They lead with saying that all the Phobos infantry would gain Obsec, infiltrators, incursors and Reivers, though it is kind of a bit redundant that they say the infiltrators and incursors do, as they would anyway. I guess it is still interesting enough on Reivers though. That's certainly been a desire for them to have for quite a long time to make them a bit more relevant. They potentially can be quite gamey on objectives now, as they do have that stratagem to deny enemy Obsec, so they can be a bit crafty about stealing objectives from time to time. Otherwise, it seems like the army will be getting a trio of different special rules. First up, they seem to get automatic light cover at greater than 18 inches away. That's basically the stealthy buff from the Successor Chapter Tactics options. I suspect that they're just going to be able to layer that on top of their regular Chapter Tactics. I think if it just full on replaces the Chapter Tactics, then that will be quite sad. I feel like the Phobos units need all the help that they can get if they are going to be strong enough to carry an army themselves. In any case, this seems pretty good for the Eliminators. Getting automatic light cover means they should be getting their +1 to save, so they should be abnormally hard to kill even in the open. Next, in Games Workshop's own words, they get a bonus to hit when firing from the hip. To me that sounds like it could be a +1 to hit on their bolt weapons when they're within 12 inches of the foe. That'd be a small but useful boost to their damage output. It might actually just about get them to the point where they're threatening to do as much damage as intercessors, rather than their usual place being fairly behind them for the points. Finally, apparently the units will also be getting 6-inch consolidation moves. Maybe not the biggest benefit in the world, but it could be quite handy for a bit of gamey shenanigans. You can get a lot of extra movement out of the fight phase that way, particularly if you're moving around vehicles, and it might allow you to get onto objectives or tie up things that don't want to be in combat. For which chapters might be good with this, it really does depend on whether those trio of benefits replaces the chapter tactic, or you get them as well as them. Some of the armies of Renown have them completely replace the chapter tactic, some of them get them in addition to it. It'll be interesting to see where they go on these guys. If they do keep the chapter tactic though, one of the first thoughts might be to use Imperial Fists. They actually seem like they could work quite well with the army, getting bolter buffs when a lot of your force is going to be armed with bolters. Otherwise, Ultramarines and Victor Tactical Warsuits are a fairly tried and tested method of putting the army up close and then fading away if you don't get first turn. White Scars would just give the whole force a whole load of extra mobility and a bit more melee threat. Advance and charge and fall back and charge are both great things, and I think would combine well with the benefits that they get. Or maybe just Iron Hands for a little bit of extra durability. A 6+ feel no pain army wide could be quite handy. Moving and shooting with suppressors and eliminators in their super doctrine also seems decent. As well as their core rules, they also access a few relics and stratagems apparently. I suspect there also will be at least one warlord trait as well. There usually is one with each army of renown. First up, relics wise, we have the Morbidus Bolts. It's a relic bolt shot that replaces the weapon's normal firing mode. If it hits the target, they suffer an automatic 2 mortal wounds, and they get -1 to combat attrition tests in the subsequent phase. Perhaps seems okay to me, maybe on one of the lieutenants or the librarian. The captain in Phobos armor has already got really quite a powerful bolt shot, and I'm not so sure that one's worth trading out. Next up, there's the Armor Umbral. This one makes hit rolls of 1 to 3 automatically fail, and the bearer is eligible to charge in a turn in which it advanced. I guess that seems kind of okay. Probably best on the Phobos Librarian out of anyone, particularly seeing as he's probably the most fighty one in combat with that Force Sword. Finally, we have a couple of stratagems, one each for the Infiltrators and the Incursors, and I'm sure there'll be a fair few more. In the free text, they say that this Saboteur Explosive Pack 1 will apply to Infiltrators. When they fall back from a vehicle or monster, you roll a dice. On a 2 to 5, they suffer D3 mortal wounds, or on a 6+, they suffer D6. If your target is a vehicle, they add +3 to the result. Maybe a useful opportunistic one if the monster that's charged you only has a couple of wounds left. Maybe could synergize quite well with White Scars as well. They don't care so much about incidentally throwing things into combat, as they can fall back and charge again if they need to. Still though, seems like it's a bit situational. Finally, for the Incursors, there's an interesting 1 command point one that's a marksman target tracker. This one's usable by the Incursors, and it allows them to target characters freely, ignoring the Lookout Sir rules. I guess that one could be potentially quite powerful if you find yourself in the right situation. You basically need to have an exposed enemy character that's actually going to care a fair bit about being hit by a whole load of regular bolt shots. Probably something toughness 3 with a not so great save. Perhaps Guitari Marshals or Sisters of Battle characters come to mind. In any case, an interesting enough looking formation. I'll be honest, my first instincts are that it's probably not looking all that strong. Unless there's some massive point shake-ups in the new chapter approved, I feel that in general a lot of the Phobos units are quite good for utility roles, but maybe just not as frontline damage dealers, which they kind of need to be if they're going to carry this army. Of course though, we don't 100% know the full picture yet. There might be other powerful stratagems and things that help with that, so I'll certainly look forward to having a review of those rules once they come out. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll certainly keep the regular 40k content coming. I do tend to post new videos most days. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel quite a lot, I would just like to mention one way in which you can help support the channel, and that's my Element Games affiliate link down in the video description below. If you live in the UK and you are thinking about buying in some models at some point, Element Games is a UK-based discount retailer with 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's miniatures. If you do order anything after clicking the link in the video description, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever. Can be a way to help out if you were thinking about buying in some models anyway. For people over in the USA, I do also have an Amazon link down there as well. That works very similarly. Click the link, buy literally anything, a small amount goes to help support the channel, and it doesn't cost you any more. Again, can just be used on things that you're going to be buying anyway. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.